Is there any other shows you acted in at TCT which was one of your favorites?
Sure. Anytime I get to be on the stage at Temple Civic Theater, it's one of my favorites. I did get the opportunity to play the witch in Into the Woods, which some of my students thought was typecasting, but I reject that. But I had a delightful time getting to do that show, and I think as I've kind of matured as a performer, that the kind of natural next steps were toward directing and music directing. And so I love getting to share the things that I've learned on the stage with other performers who are getting their time to shine on the stage too.
What were your favorite shows that you were the musical director in at TCT?
Well, I think the first time I ever music directed was when we did Oliver in collaboration with Temple High School. And Spencer Tolson was Oliver, a precious little moon-faced, baby at that time in the show. And so that was my first opportunity to really get to teach the vocal parts. And my experience in choirs and as a vocalist, I think, gives me some insight into how to best do that, how to best teach a group how to sing in parts, how to get the parts sounding nice and clean, everything in tune, and then using that music as, again, an avenue for telling the story. And I also most recently got to music direct Young Frankenstein.
Yes.
Which was a blast, and I got to work with several of my coworkers at Temple College. And I would call it the pit, but we were actually on a platform about 25 feet in the air behind the stage. And so you can't exactly call that a pit. It was more like a cloud that we were on and providing the music for that show. And that show has such classic Broadway style music that it was delightful. Everything from jazz to the big kind of Broadway jazz hands kind of numbers. So that was a great time as well.
Let's talk about a few of the musicals that you have directed at TCT.
Okay.
Seussical and Hairspray and Mamma Mia. So do you have any stories and any...
I have all the stories. The first musical that I got to direct at Temple Civic Theater was Wizard of Oz. So I was just back to Temple, having been in Baton Rouge and then in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It was my first year at Temple College and back in the Temple area. And I knew that they had planned to do The Wizard of Oz that summer. And so I called up Jody Donaldson and said, I'd really like to volunteer to do something, at the theater. So maybe I could stage manage The Wizard of Oz for you or do something like that. And I think a few days later I got a call and he said, would you be willing to direct it? And I was like, well, that is not what I thought I was signing up for, but I would be happy to do that. And so we did kind of a carnival style Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz is a challenging show because of all the magic, the movie magic that is in it and that we think of. So we think of the tornado and the storm and the house spinning around and the witch getting landed on by a house and then legs shriveling up. So all of this movie magic that we were used to from the movie and then trying to translate that onto the stage. So we had to get very creative with the way that we told that story, in that we were still providing the audience with that sense of wonder and, ooh, that's cool, but maybe without a house spinning in a tornado, literally.
That visual.
Some of those things cannot be done very easily in a 240-seat thrust stage where the audience is so close. So we had to get really creative with our storytelling ideas, and that was a joy about that show. And then Seussical is a humongous show. Someone was asking me about that show recently, and I said it's basically an opera. So the score for the show is about 400 pages, and the show is basically sung all the way through. There are very few spoken lines that are not underscored in the show. It's a very big show. And we had a fabulous costumer Carol Giesbers did our costumes for that show, and I think her costumes just made the show. The Bird Girls were like showgirls, and the Who's were just the cutest villagers you've ever seen, and we just really enjoyed getting to tell that story with the big over-the-top characters. That was really, I think, the most enjoyable part of that show. Hairspray was the show that we performed at Temple College.
Yeah.
And we had nice big audiences, great participation. Again, we had to be creative. So the Temple College auditorium doesn't have a lot of wing space. So a show like Hairspray, where you're having to be in several different locations throughout the show, but without really being able to store large set pieces off stage.
Right.
So we used a kind of an ancient theater technique called periactoi, which are turning towers that have different sets on each side of the tower. So the periactoi remain on the stage for the entire performance, but depending on what the scene was, the different sides were rotated. And then we made use of various set pieces brought on and off, and of course the downstage areas where we were able to kind of set up some semi-permanent set pieces that were only lit during those scenes. So that's kind of how we faced the challenges of that show. And then the cast of that show was just outstanding. They had a great time, and because they had a great time, the audience had a great time.
Right.
So I feel like that was really kind of one of the things that made Hairspray a special experience. And then what was the last show that we were talking about?
I think Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia. So
Which I was able to help with Mamma Mia doing hair and makeup.
Thank you for doing that so much. Mamma Mia is the closest cast that I have ever worked with. That cast had chemistry, and they all really pulled together and enjoyed each other and continued to spend time together far after the show was over.
Right.
And the other thing that was so great about Mamma Mia is that there are really two ages of casts in the show.
Yes.
So you have the mom age cast, and then you have the daughter age cast. So we had a dynamic group of older and younger cast members that made that show a lot of fun to put on. And it had its challenges too,
right?
As far as that goes, but it was definitely fun. I always love getting to work with my partner, Joanna Langthorne, who is my choreographer go-to, and she and I have the best time putting on shows. Mamma Mia was completely sold out.
Yes.
And so in order for Joanna and I to watch the show, we had to sit up in the balcony area close to the light instruments.
Right.
We were not in official seats.
Which is technically where we kind of store props and small furniture.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to see our own show, we kind of had to have jump seats up in the sky, and the cast started comparing us to the Muppets that sit in the balcony.
I remember that
of the shows, and we thought that was appropriate because we were the critics up in the air.
But you know, a lot of the directors, after you're finished and it's opening night, I don't think that a lot of the our audience realizes that you don't have to be here for any after that first night's performance.
Right.
You officially can be done.
Sure.
And the cast loved that you wanted to come every night and be here for them and for the theater.
Well, for one thing, I really enjoy the opportunity to warm up a cast before the show, vocally, acting-wise, and there is a chemistry and an energy that comes from a director that I want the cast and the crew and the orchestra to feel that we're there for them, that they're encircled in that support. And I know Joanna feels the same way. So we do our very best, if we're able, to come to every performance of the shows and celebrate the efforts of the cast and crew, and just getting to see the audience reaction too is a delight, because every audience is different. During Mamma Mia, we had a neat group who had been in the show at Waco Civic Theater when they had done it, and they all came to watch the show. They rented a party bus and came down, and the night they were there, the audience had a completely different energy than some of the other performances. Because they knew the show so well. So what they were looking for was, how is this show different than when we did the show? And they just delighted in those changes. Instead of going, well, that's not how we did it. They really had a great time. And enjoyed it. And then at Mamma Mia ended with a dance party every night. So we would have cast members pull audience members onto the stage and dance with Dancing Queen and some of those great ABBA hits.
It was so much fun. I mean, the theater became a dance floor.
It did.
And that was great. Okay, before we get finished, I do have to touch on something.
Okay.
So we've released now our 2021-2022 season, and you are going to be directing Guys and Dolls.
That's right.
And Joanna will also be doing choreography.
That's
correct?
Right.
So tell us, give us a little description about this show, and I'm so excited that we will be able to do this, because it was in our previous season and then COVID hit.
Right.
So now I'm so happy that we're able to bring this back. So can you give us little tidbits about it?
I can. Joanna Langthorne and I will be working on Guys and Dolls. Guys and Dolls is 1940s New York City, what's happening in the underground. So it's not the society people necessarily. It's the gangsters who are holding their dice games underground in back alleys and in the kind of seedy underbelly of New York City, and it's showgirls, and it's just a perfect storm of what happens when that group of people collide with the Salvation Army missionaries, and the most unlikely couples appear, I think, out of that experience. And I was lucky enough to be in that show at Temple High School when I was a sophomore, and so it's a show that I am very intimately familiar with, and I think it was an interesting project to us because it's classic music, it's big singing, dancing, fun. It's, New York City at its kind of slimiest and also at its best.
Right.
And then the Havana scene, I won't give away too much, but there's so much to it that's going to be colorful and bright and just a real candy dish kind of spectacle for our audiences. And I could not be more excited about putting that on next summer.
I know, and I cannot wait for us to start working on that show. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you for joining us at Backstage at TCT. Be sure to find and follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and bookmark our website to learn more about our upcoming productions and how you can share your talents and be a part of Temple Civic Theater. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and subscribe. See you next time at Backstage at TCT.